My dear brothers and sisters, how many times have we said, I trust Allah, but then did absolutely nothing? How many dreams were buried under the excuse of, if Allah wills, while we never even tried? Today's reminder is not to break your trust in Allah, it is to correct it, because sometimes what we call tawakkul is not reliance, it is self-deception. Listen carefully, this reminder may wake your heart up. Understanding true tawakkul begins with correcting what our hearts are attached to. Tawakkul is not a statement of the tongue alone, nor is it a passive state where a person disconnects from responsibility and effort. True tawakkul is an inner certainty that Allah alone controls outcomes, while the servant remains fully engaged in striving, planning, and acting within the means Allah has placed in this world. It is a balance between movement and submission, between effort and surrender. When the heart relies on Allah but the limbs refuse to move, that is not tawakkul, and when the limbs move but the heart relies only on itself, that too is not tawakkul. True tawakkul is when the heart is anchored to Allah, while the body works with discipline, sincerity, and purpose. A person who understands tawakkul knows that Allah created causes and commanded us to use them. Hunger is removed through eating, knowledge is gained through learning, provision is sought through work, and solutions are pursued through patience and action. Trusting Allah does not cancel these realities, it gives them meaning. When a believer steps forward to act, they do so knowing that effort alone does not guarantee success, but abandoning effort guarantees regret. Tawakkul teaches us to try without arrogance and to fail without despair. It frees the heart from anxiety because while the servant takes responsibility for effort, the burden of results is handed entirely to Allah. True tawakkul also reshapes how we view outcomes. When success comes, the believer does not become proud because they know it was Allah who opened the door. When hardship comes, the believer does not collapse because they know Allah chose that path with wisdom. Tawakkul is not about always getting what you want. It is about being content with what Allah gives after you have done your part. It trains the heart to say, I did what I could, and I leave what I cannot control to the one who controls everything. This understanding transforms daily life. Work becomes worship, planning becomes reliance, and patience becomes strength. A person with true tawakkul wakes up motivated, not lazy, calm, not careless, hopeful, not reckless. They strive with excellence while their heart remains detached from outcomes, knowing that Allah's plan is always better, even when it is painful, delayed, or hidden behind doors that never open. The difference between tawakkul and false tawakkul lies in where the heart rests and how the limbs respond. True tawakkul is an active state of faith, while false tawakkul is often a comfortable illusion. A person practicing real tawakkul understands that Allah is the ultimate controller of all affairs, yet they never use that belief as an excuse to abandon effort. False tawakkul, on the other hand, disguises laziness as spirituality. It presents in the form of statements that sound faithful but are empty of action, where a person claims reliance upon Allah while neglecting the responsibilities Allah Himself commanded them to fulfill. True tawakkul moves a person forward with humility. It pushes them to seek provision while knowing provision is written, to prepare while knowing destiny is fixed, and to strive while knowing results are unseen. False tawakkul freezes a person in place. It tells them not to work because Allah will provide, not to plan because Allah already knows, and not to try because whatever is meant to happen will happen anyway. This mindset contradicts the very purpose of trust in Allah, because it removes accountability and effort from the believer's life, turning faith into a passive claim rather than a living practice. In real tawakkul, the heart is attached to Allah, but the hands are busy. In false tawakkul, the heart is often attached to comfort, while the tongue mentions Allah. True tawakkul produces discipline, consistency, and perseverance. It makes a person wake up early, seek halal means, improve themselves, and take responsibility for their family and community. False tawakkul produces excuses. It blames destiny for failures that were born from neglect, poor choices, or lack of effort, while still expecting divine assistance without fulfilling human responsibility. Another clear difference appears in how a person reacts to outcomes. With true tawakkul, success does not inflate the ego and failure does not destroy the soul. The believer understands that Allah grants and withholds with wisdom, and their peace remains intact either way. With false tawakkul, disappointment often leads to resentment, confusion, or even anger toward Allah, because deep down the person expected reward without struggle. True tawakkul accepts Allah's decree after sincere effort, while false tawakkul questions the decree after careless inaction. True tawakkul builds strong believers who are productive, hopeful, and grounded. False tawakkul weakens individuals and communities, creating dependency, stagnation, and misplaced blame. One is a source of strength and balance, the other is a veil that hides fear of effort behind religious language. Taking means is not separate from faith. It is an essential expression of it. Islam does not teach believers to live detached from reality, waiting for results without participation. Instead, it teaches that Allah created this world with systems, causes, and consequences, and He commanded human beings to move within them responsibly. To take means is to acknowledge the wisdom of Allah in how He designed life. A believer who takes means does so not because they doubt Allah's power, but because they trust His wisdom. They understand that Allah is capable of granting without effort, yet He chose effort to be the path through which most blessings arrive. Faith is not proven by inaction. Faith is proven when a person steps forward despite uncertainty, relying on Allah while using what Allah has already provided. When someone seeks knowledge, they attend classes and open books. When someone seeks provision, they work honestly and persistently. When someone seeks healing, they pursue treatment while praying for cure. These actions do not weaken reliance upon Allah, they strengthen it, because they align the believer's behavior with the divine order Allah placed in creation. Ignoring means while claiming trust is not devotion, it is contradiction. Taking means also teaches humility. It reminds a believer that results are not guaranteed by effort alone. A person may work tirelessly and still face delay or loss, yet their faith remains intact because their trust was never in their effort, but in Allah. This balance protects the heart from arrogance when success comes and from despair when hardship remains. A believer who understands this does not become lazy, nor do they become obsessive over outcomes. They strive with excellence while remaining inwardly calm, knowing that Allah sees their effort, even if the world does not reward it. When means are neglected, faith often becomes distorted. People begin to confuse destiny with negligence and patience with passivity. They wait for doors to open without ever walking toward them. True faith, however, pushes a person to knock while believing Allah controls who opens the door. Taking means is an act of obedience because Allah commanded effort. At first, it may appear harmless or even spiritual, but over time it produces stagnation and weakness. When a person convinces themselves that relying on Allah means avoiding effort, they begin to withdraw from the very actions that Allah commanded. Responsibilities are delayed, opportunities are ignored, and personal growth comes to a halt. Life becomes reactive instead of purposeful, and days pass with intentions but no movement. One of the most damaging effects of false tawakkul is the normalization of laziness. Tasks are postponed under the assumption that what is written will come regardless of action. This mindset erodes discipline and weakens motivation. Over time, a person may lose confidence in their ability to strive, making even simple responsibilities feel overwhelming. Instead of building resilience, false tawakkul creates dependency on circumstances and people while masking fear of effort behind religious language. What begins as misplaced trust gradually becomes avoidance of accountability. False tawakkul also impacts emotional and spiritual well-being. When expectations are not met, frustration often follows. A person who did not take means may still expect positive outcomes, and when those outcomes do not appear, disappointment turns into confusion. This confusion can quietly damage a person's understanding of Allah's wisdom, leading them to question why help did not arrive. The issue was never divine neglect, but human inaction. Over time, repeated disappointments may harden the heart, replacing contentment with resentment and passivity with hopelessness. In family and community life, false tawakkul can spread its effects outward. Parents may neglect planning for their children's future, individuals may avoid seeking knowledge or skills, and communities may fall behind due to lack of initiative. When effort is absent, progress slows, and reliance on others increases. This creates imbalance where responsibility is shifted instead of shared, and trust in Allah is misunderstood as waiting for rescue rather than building strength. False tawakkul also weakens personal accountability. Mistakes are blamed on destiny rather than corrected through reflection and effort. Growth becomes difficult because self-examination is replaced with excuses. Over time, this mindset distances a person from the true spirit of faith, which calls for striving, patience, and trust working together. Instead of bringing peace, false tawakkul quietly steals purpose, energy, and clarity from everyday life. Developing correct tawakkul begins with correcting one's understanding of Allah and His role in every affair. A believer must first recognize that Allah is the creator of both outcomes and the paths that lead to them. This awareness shapes the heart to rely on Allah without rejecting responsibility. When a person understands that effort itself is part of Allah's decree, they no longer see action as a contradiction to trust. Instead, they see striving as obedience and planning as submission to divine wisdom. Correct tawakkul starts internally, but from confidence in Allah's wisdom. It allows a believer to move forward without bitterness, carrying lessons instead of regrets. Developing correct tawakkul is a continuous process that grows through reflection, patience, and repeated effort. It matures as the believer learns to release outcomes while remaining committed to striving, trusting that Allah's plan unfolds perfectly even when it does not align with personal expectations. In conclusion, true tawakkul is not a slogan we repeat, nor a comfort we hide behind when effort feels difficult. It is a living state of faith that joins the heart and the limbs together in obedience to Allah. It teaches us to move forward with purpose while remaining inwardly surrendered, to strive without arrogance, and to accept without despair. Throughout the Quran and Sunnah, we are reminded that reliance upon Allah was never meant to produce laziness or neglect, but strength, courage, and clarity. False tawakkul weakens the believer by separating trust from responsibility, while correct tawakkul revives faith by aligning effort with reliance. When a believer understands this balance, their work becomes worship, their patience becomes power, and their reliance becomes a source of peace. They learn that Allah does not ask them to control outcomes, only to walk sincerely toward Him, trusting that every step taken with effort and faith is never wasted in His sight.